This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon here on a Mitch Marathon month. And yes, I am digging back into the closet, pulling out some interviews that slipped through the crack. And so if you've noticed, what I'm doing is sort of like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm giving you fresh new interviews that are newsworthy and happening right now. And then like Tuesday, Thursday, I'm sort of throwing a couple of interviews that were left in the vaults, for lack of a better word. And this one here today is with Dave Bickler, who of course was the original lead singer for Survivor. And there are two things I want to talk about when we talk Survivor. Now, his new album, by the way, or his latest album, is called Dark Light. Do go check out Dark Light. It's certainly worth a listen. But when you think back to Survivor, you've got to look at their first album, the eponymous Survivor album. It was produced and engineered and mixed by folks that would later go on to work with Kiss, Motley Crue, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and pretty much everybody else in between. You've got Bruce Fairbairn on there mixing it. You've got Bob Rock. Bandmate Jim Pederick's on there. The assistant engineer is Mike Klink. It is produced by Ron Nevison, and it's recorded and engineered furthermore by Bruce Fairbairn and Jim Pederick. I mean, just an all-star team of production and mixing on their very, very first album. I mean, who knew on that first album that production team and engineering and mixing team would go on and have such an illustrious career? Between those guys, they've easily sold 100 million albums, or have had a hand in albums that have sold about 100 million albums. I mean, that's a guess, but it's got to be. Right? I mean, it's got to be. If you look at everything Ron's done and Mike Klink with Guns N' Roses. Anyway. Now, the other thing, of course, that Survivor is known for is a soundtrack song. Rocky III soundtrack song, Eye of the Tiger. Now, Dave sang the song. So we're talking to the guy who sang Eye of the Tiger. One of the greatest songs known to man, in my opinion. And it's funny because when I was, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I was, a young whippersnapper, I always thought that soundtrack songs were songs that were throwaways, that they weren't good enough to be on the band's album, so they would just throw them away and give them to the movie studio. That's what I thought. I thought, oh, it's on the soundtrack. Wasn't good enough for the album, so it can't be any good. But I'm going to read to you this list that I've been looking at of soundtracks. And first of all, what is the best soundtrack song for you? I mean, Eye of the Tiger gets me every time. And that's and I also want to discuss what is the best soundtrack album, and I'm going to keep that at the end here of this little talk up here, because I've got one, and it's not what you're going to expect. But let's look at some of these great soundtrack songs. Okay, so I like all kinds of music, melodic rock and stuff. So I'm going to start with this one, Phil Collins, for the movie Buster, which was a gangster film. Gave two songs. A Groovy Kind of Love, gotta love it, great song, but also Two Hearts, right? Can you sing it? Two Hearts. Anyway, I don't sing. There's a lot of things I do, and some of them I shouldn't do. But of course, Two Hearts, great song, soundtrack song, right? Who knew? And it went on to get an Oscar nomination, and furthermore, it went on and got a Grammy win. So there you go. Billy Idol, who I am seeing with Bryan Adams in August. One of his greatest songs ever released, Cradle of Love. And you're going, oh, it's not, come on, it's not. Yeah, guess what? Cradle of Love was part of an Andrew Dice Clay movie. And just absolutely one of the greatest songs you're ever going to hear from Billy Idol. And then, of course, let's go over it. So let me just go through this list. And I want you to compile a list and go over to @MitchLafon on Twitter and send me your best soundtrack songs. And also, by the way, while you're on the internet, loudtracks.com/Mitch, pick up a t-shirt. Gotta love the t-shirts. But okay, let's keep going. Bob Seger from Beverly Hills Cop 2, Shakedown. That is essential Bob Seger right there. One of his greatest songs ever. Just sort of, hey, here you go. And if you look at Billboard's Hot 100, it was his only number one single. So great song right there. Maniac by Michael Sembello. Boy, what else? Here's one from the Breakfast Club. We love The Breakfast Club. What a great classic movie. Believe it or not, I actually watched it twice this year. It's been appearing on our cable TV movie package, and you're thinking, some of you younger ones, what's cable TV? I know. I'm old. I still have cable. But Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, a song, by the way, that they didn't want to record. They wanted nothing to do with it. And it appears on the Breakfast Club soundtrack, and it was, by the way, also covered by Billy Idol later on. One of the greatest songs put out by that band. Okay, where else are we going to... Yes. Since we like rock, let's go over to John Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory. So the band, after New Jersey is having a tough time, Richie goes and does his thing, and John goes and does his thing, and so John puts out a solo record that's not really a solo record because it's part of a soundtrack, so it's not really him leaving the band, it's him doing a move. Anyway, Blaze of Glory from Young Guns 2. Phenomenal. And the band, what is left of the band, still play it once in a while in concert. And you just hear that opening, and you get sucked in right away. Love that song. And so I'm now fighting with my 12-year-old self going, you see? These are not throwaways, dude. These are great songs. And of course, we'll continue. Ray Parker Jr. Ghostbusters, number one song. Boy, what else do we have? Huey Lewis, The Power of Love. Now that, I think, was when I had my epiphany, because I remember being a huge Huey Lewis fan back in that time. Sports, one of the greatest albums ever. Now, let me think. What do we qualify Huey Lewis as being? I don't think they're necessarily a pop act. They're certainly not a metal act. Are they just a rock band? Is Huey Lewis just a rock band? How do we categorize them? Anyway, The Power of Love from Back to the Future, which, by the way, I remember very specifically being exceptionally peeved that at the time, or at least around where I lived, I don't know about the rest of the world, but around where I lived, the only format that you could get it on was vinyl. And somebody had given it to me as a birthday present on vinyl. And I went to the shopping mall. I know, I'm old. I went to malls. And couldn't find it on cassette, couldn't find it on CD. Drove me nuts. Because I would see the video on Much Music up here in Canada, and couldn't own a copy that I could play. And we can have the vinyl debate all you want. I don't like vinyl. I've never liked vinyl. Hiss and pop and play 20 minutes of music and have to stand up and flip it over, and always having to play it in a very linear way where you go song 1 to song 2 to song 3 to song 4. even in the early days of compact disc, you could hit random and the album would appear in whatever fashion that the computer decided. And of course, I'm an iTunes guy, so I like making playlists. Having to listen to something, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, I can't stand it. And then you throw in the hiss and the pop, leave me alone. Leave me alone. But so the Power of Love, only could get it on vinyl, and it drove me up a wall. But hey, what else do we got? Let's go back to Phil Collins. And we talked, by the way, about Maniac. Another sort of dancing movie was Footloose, Kenny Loggins. Now Kenny also had a song on the Top Gun soundtrack, not Mighty Wings, that was Cheap Trick, Danger Zone. And by the way, the Top Gun soundtrack with Cheap Trick doing Mighty Wings, Mighty Wings is one of the greatest Cheap Trick songs, and for years, you couldn't get hold of it on the Cheap Trick compilation or anything like that. So that's another one. But okay, back to Phil Collins, Against All Odds, from the movie Against All Odds. Brilliant song, one of his best. And let me start wrapping this up here, because there are so many. Prince, the whole Purple Rain soundtrack. Now, some of you are going to argue that that's the best soundtrack ever, When Doves Cry and Purple Rain and all. Well, maybe. I might listen to that argument if you want to say that. But, of course, we had the Bee Gees, Staying Alive, that whole Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, just absolutely terrific. But, I'm trying to, yes, Bryan Adams, that's what I'm trying to say. See, I get forgetful as I get older. One of the greatest songs ever for an artist, I believe, and I haven't looked it up, but I believe it holds the record for most consecutive weeks at number 1 or in the top 10, something like that, on the UK charts. And it is, of course, Everything I Do It For You, from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Now that, by the way, Huey Lewis, I was able to get as a CD single. So, I bought it and played it. So what are you going to say about that? Now, let's get over to the greatest soundtrack ever. And I'm hearing the arguments for Prince, but, I'm a rock fan. I like rock. It has to be a soundtrack to what was remarkably a sort of dull movie. Now, you might argue that the Roadie soundtrack with Cheap Trick doing Everything Works If You Let It is terrific, and Alice Cooper doing Pain. But I think I'm going to give my vote to Last Action Hero, the Schwarzenegger movie. You've got Big Gun by AC/DC, you've got Alice in Chains on there, you've got Megadeth, Real World with Queensryche, Anthrax. There's an incredible live version of Dream On by Aerosmith, which I believe had like a 50-piece orchestra or something like that going on. You've got Cypress Hill. You've got Last Action Hero, the title track by Tesla, which honestly, why doesn't Tesla play that song live? I'm actually going to see them next week, and I'm going to ask them. I'm going to say, hey, Tesla, play the damn song. I'm just going to say it like that because I'm a dick. No, I'm not. But I will suggest that they play that song. And then but then, of course, since Tesla is touring with Def Leppard, Def Leppard had that song 2 steps behind. So you look at this soundtrack: AC/DC, Megadeth, Queensryche, Def Leppard, Anthrax, Aerosmith, Tesla. I mean, I'm sorry, Prince, but in my world, that wins right there. So there you go. So anyway, I took a long deviation from David Bickler. The album is available. Go check it out. This interview dates from April of 2019. So a little bit late. A little bit. But We are Mitch Marathon monthing. Can we say that? I'm almost caught up in the can that have been recorded and coming up soon. Here, I'll tell you these ones, and maybe you can Twitter me or Facebook me to tell me which ones. But we've got Glenn Sobel from Alice Cooper's band. We've got Robin Trower. Now, here's the thing with Trower. I have, and I looked it up, not one, but two interviews. One from 2018 that really slipped through the cracks, and then one from 2019. So I think on that episode, I'm going to just give you both of them and just say, you know what, sorry, but here they are. Sherry Curry, producer Dave Prater, who worked on Night Rangers Feeding Off the Mojo and Arcade with Stephen Pearcy. We've got Janet Gardner, who was in Vixen with her husband. We've got Miles Davis's son, David Freeberg of Starship, Gary Peel of Boston, and Sammy Hagar's band. And then I've got a Yes special, Billy Sherwood, which I just recorded, in fact, yesterday. And John Davidson. Now the John Davidson part of the Yes one, it is from 2018, and it slipped through the cracks because I was on a different platform, and then there was changes made, and because of the changes made, anyway. You're going to get that. I've got a Foreigner one, so we're almost caught up. Let me count them here. I've got about 9, so we're almost done. A couple more weeks, and Mitch Marathon month will come to an end, and then we'll just do it all over again. So anyway, without further ado, here is the one, the only, Dave Bickler. We are speaking with singer Dave Bickler, formerly of Survivor, but now solo. He's got a new album out called Dark Light. Dave, an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
And likewise, my friend. Absolute pleasure to talk to you as well.
Yes, and of course, thank you to Chip for setting it up. He's been busy. Set me up with Judas Priest and with you today, so it's been a good Chip day.
Oh, good company for me.
Good company for you, yeah. So let's talk about Dark Light and making new music. You, of course, listen to the premise. You were, of course, in Survivor. You have Eye of the Tiger. You have these big hits. You left. You came back. You could easily go out there and say Dave Bickler presents Survivor and give people 15 of the greatest songs. But you're like, nope, we need new music. So talk to me about the importance of making new music, staying relevant, staying current, and staying an artist and being creative.
Boy, I sure hope so. I mean, that's what I want more than anything else, just to be able to create music, it's great to have, recognition for the stuff you've done. And my past work, I'm proud of that. The work I did with Survivor, I'm proud of. But, I want to forge ahead. And I still love doing this. I'm still very grateful to be able to play music, and that I get the opportunity to do that. So I don't take it for granted, and I can't help it. I mean, and I love like recording and doing that whole process is still. I say this a lot, but it still seems magical to me that you can do that. You can record things and play them back. I know it's like 120 years old now, the technology, but it's amazing to me still.
It really is. So talk to me about putting together the songs. Do you sort of go back? Because I've heard it. I've had access to the press kit and stuff, but fans haven't heard it. Are you sort of revisiting what you were doing with Survivor and giving them an updated thing, or what are you doing musically? So a fan that hasn't heard from you in a couple of years, they want to check it out. What can they expect?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm where I come from, I'm a tenor. I like melodic rock, and so if you listen to my new record, you're gonna hear that. But I also believe that it's a modern sounding record, and hopefully, the songs that are compelling. It's the things that I write songs about are stuff that's important to me or means something to me. it was a personal journey, and I hope people would give it a shot, give it a listen.
I think they will. And talk to me a little bit about the personal journey, because the first line in the press release that caught my eye, it said debut solo album. And I've known of you since back in the 80s with, of course, Eye of the Tiger and the whole thing. I'm a huge music fan. And I was like, what? He hasn't done a solo album since? It actually sort of caught me by surprise. I thought by now you'd have like 10 of them out. So first of all, what took you so long to get to your first solo album? And then tell me about the journey about actually doing something under your own brand and own banner and not as a band project.
Yeah, I mean, I did make a bunch of recordings, and over the years, but I never quite thought that, or people didn't want to hear it, or didn't want to listen to it, they didn't even want to give it a shot, at the time. And a lot of times too, I wasn't personally not satisfied with, the results, of that. But I thought there was some good stuff, but finally, and I was in bands too, I had bands where there were bands, and it wasn't my solo project. It was a project, a collective project with a band. But, I decided, it's been a while now since I made that decision, but I decided I wanted to get serious about it and try to find the right people, the best people I could get to play on that record, and I had all these songs, right? I had all these songs. And so I started looking around for a drummer first because, the way to put it together, not having a band around me, I thought I would have to get a great drum tracks first and foremost, and that's how I came to find Ryan Hoyle, a friend of mine at Sony, Jeremy Holiday, suggested it, and when I looked in, I thought he would be perfect for me. So I started going out to California to Ryan Hoyle's drums. He was, by the way, with Collective Soul, and he played, he toured with Paul Rogers, and so making the trek out to LA to record drum tracks, and also Brad Smith was part of that, the guy from Blind Melon,
yep.
who he plays bass. Blind Melon, he played bass on it, but he also helped me a lot. He's a formidable, musician, songwriter himself, so he helped me a lot with those sessions, and then just over time I'm recording these tracks, and I finally ended up at Soundspot Productions in New Jersey with Stephen DeCudis, and that's where we started getting serious about overdubing guitars and the vocals we did, and so that was a long trek to get it finished.
Talk to me about the process in terms of where do these songs come from? Are these things that you sort of put together in 2017, 2018, and early 2019? Or do these go back to the where do the songs come from? Is this a new personal statement, or is this looking back in the catalog and saying, you know what? When we did those 20 demos with Survivor back from 93 to 96, we should have released this. So I'm going to release. Where does the music come from?
It's songs that some of those songs we had their genesis a long time ago that I couldn't quite finish, and I didn't know quite how to finish them at the time, but there was always an idea lingering in my head, and some of them were new along the process. I think I started the recording drum tracks in 2010, and so I, along the way I was writing new songs, and so it's kind of a mix of songs of mine. Some of them that go back to that time period, and some are along the process, new ones that I wrote as we went along.
Yeah, and that's great. So just real quick, let me go back to the Survivor days for a little bit, because at the time, I was in high school. Obviously, Rocky III comes out, Eye of the Tiger hits big. You're all over the place. I mean, ubiquitous. You couldn't run away from TV or radio and not get that song coming at you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that time, because, you grow up as a kid, you want to be successful, you want to have this moment in the spotlight, and boom, suddenly you have it. What was that like for you to be in any mall, in any radio station, and just go, that's me. That is me.
Yeah, no, it's all, I remember the first time I heard a record that I'd done on the radio, and that was a great moment, right? That's if you want to be a musician, you want to be, in a rock band, that's your goal, is to get your song on the radio. So, that Eye of the Tiger, when it came out, just was, unbelievable. It exploded. And in fact, I can remember my friends in Chicago after, I think it was number one for 6 weeks on the Billboard charts, but they played it for months in Chicago. our hometown, right? And my friends are going, please stop. You know, they were actually quite annoyed with it because it played so much. But it changed everything for the band. You know, that was the, you know, we went from, you know, being one thing to being another thing.
Yeah.
And,
with all new stresses as well, because before the record company's like, all right, we need a hit, you got to produce, that's your stress, and then you have the hit, and they're like, all right, well, now you need to make another one like that, and you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah. Right.
Right, aren't record companies fun? But okay, so because I'm going from the highest high to, and I don't know if the next part is the lowest low, but after that, the vocal problems come in. The voice gives out. Talk to me a little bit about that time. Was that just because you were on the road so much and the record company and the band was just doing too much? When did you discover
I don't really know. It's still a mystery to me. Well, I was getting hoarse when we were out with REO Speedwagon, you know, on tour. And I was getting hoarse, you know, and I'd never had that happen to me before. And I didn't know what was wrong. So I went to a vocal laryngologist, however you pronounce that word. And, he looked at my vocal cords and told me I have polyps on my vocal cords, you know, and a very common occurrence for singers, you know, and he said that if it was nodules, you could treat that by, you know, voice resting, and there's a lot of things you can do, but without surgery, but polyps will never go away unless they're surgically removed. So I had to have surgery in the middle of that tour. And that was really stressful, you know, but it was successful. It worked, but I found myself back out on the road, you know, in 2 weeks, I was back right out on the road, which is probably not the best idea in the world, but we were in the middle of all that, you know, so I really had to. So I had done voice rest, you know, I had to carry a notebook around with me. I couldn't speak at all. The doctor told me no speaking. So just sing and then not speak. So try it sometime if you want to find out how difficult that is and how we take for granted speaking, because you can communicate so quickly and, you know, in such a precise way. It's really hard to do that when you have to write everything down. You know, it's very tough.
Yeah, and what people don't realize is that we're speaking all the time. Even when you're driving the car, you're usually saying, hey, all right, pass or stop, or, you know, there's always some vocalization going on. You can't escape it.
It's so powerful to be able to do that, to communicate. It really is.
Yeah, and when they say, you know, the sound is deafening, or what's the expression they say? Silence is deafening. You're like, yeah, you're right. It really is. But
you're
okay.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about Jim Petterick and Frankie Sullivan, because the rumor is, or the story goes, that you have these issues, and they say, dude, suck it up, Buttercup. Let's get back out there. We got money to make. I mean, was it really sort of that harsh, where there was no concern for your health, no concern for your rest, or is that sort of, you know, a myth that has grown over the last 30 years?
It wasn't that there was no concern, but the concern, which you can understand, the concern was we were in the middle of this amazing breakout, you know, with this amazing song, which was, you know, just huge, and, you know, that we were in the middle of this really important tour, you know, and that I was gonna, you know, get in the way of our success, you know. I mean, that was what I was feeling a lot of, you know, and it was a lot of pressure, you know, it really was.
Oh, I can imagine. So, eventually, you come back to the band. Talk to me about that. Was that bittersweet, or was that regaining your crown?
It was just when I was asked back, like in 1993, I jumped at the chance because I wanted to get back up and play and perform, and, you know, it was good to be back, if you will. And we had some good years in there. We actually made quite a few recordings too. Some of them which are not. Some of them haven't even been heard that we did, you know, during that time period. But we, you know, it was good, you know, until it wasn't, you know.
Till it wasn't, yeah. And I am going to ask you about those demos because they are famous. But getting back to Dark Light for a second, you have the guy from Blind Melon, you got the guy from Collective Soul in there. Do you take this out on the road and give it a proper tour and get out there? And if so, do you focus just on the album, or is it sort of the greatest hits? You get some Dark Light, but you also get some of what you're known for.
I would say, all the above. I have done shows, where I've done both. I've done both. I'll play some of my the ones that I really like to sing. The ones I like to sing. I'll sing Survivor songs and then do my original stuff too, with the idea of working more of those into the set as I go along. Which
is a good idea. So talk to me about your voice now, because you had the issue. We are all getting a bit older. How is the voice holding up, and what do you have to do to keep it in top shape? Because you have a very particular voice. I mean, when you hear Eye of the Tiger, and I'm going to refer to that because that's what people know.
Yeah, sure.
That's a very precise vocal. I mean, there's a sound. You can tell that it's you. What do you do to keep the voice in shape at this point?
Well, what I didn't do in the old days was I did not ever warm up. I didn't take particularly good care of myself. So that was all bad stuff. And I've learned now to the warm-ups are critical. And I've got some really good ones that I do that are really effective. And it's amazing how much easier it makes it to sing. So that stuff is critical to me now. And you gotta get some sleep. It's resting your voice. Just the sleeping at night is really, really important.
It really is. So now that we have the new album out, is it sort of a life thing where it's taken 5 or 10 years to get to this point and it's done and now we're moving on, or does it sort of awaken the creative juices and say, okay, Dark Light this year, in 2 years we get a new one? Is there more coming, or was this like, we finally made it, we're good?
No, more coming. Yes, I'm glad you asked. Yes, I'm working on that, and I can assure you that this will not take as long as the Dark Light did to get done, because I know I have these wonderful people that I work with, and I know I can a team of people that I can work with that to make that a lot smoother and faster. Well, I really look forward to that, and I plan on having the next one coming out. Yeah, not too distant future. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping for it. By the way, the new album, like I said, I've had a chance to hear it. It is great. It really is. They're fun songs, and I think that's the important thing that a lot of bands forget, is that it's supposed to be fun, and this is fun. It's a fun collection of songs.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I hope so too. I think it is important to have fun. A lot of bands, the Beatles had fun, didn't they? I mean, they had a lot of fun, doing stuff, being, and I remembered that. That stuck with me. They would do something like, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, just this really out there, crazy song, but just, but fun, as you say.
Oh, it's absolutely fun. And I will go back to the past just a little bit here. The album, of course, is Caught in the Game. You do Eye of the Tiger. The song goes massive. The movie goes massive. You're all over the place. You're the tour, REO Speedwagon. What was it like going into Caught in the Game? Was there a lot of record company pressure? Was there a lot of guys sitting in the studio going, yeah, it's not a hit, you're going to have to redo that? Or was it just like, okay, we know you got it. Go do what you got to do. You've got Kevin Cronin that comes in. You've got Richard Page that's doing backing vocals.
Richard Page, yeah, it was cool.
Well, Richard was doing everybody back then. I mean, he was on Twisted Sister's album back then. He was on Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil back then. He was on Kisses Creatures of the Night, if I'm not mistaken, if I know my history correctly. Yeah, he's a. In fact, do you ever talk to Richard? I'd love to get him as an interview.
But Richard, if you're out there anywhere listening, I would love to talk to you, man. Because he was a really nice and a real gentleman, and it was cool. And that was before Mr. Mister. Then of course that came out and just blew up. It was amazing records.
Well, not to get away from you for a second, but just to talk about Richard, is when Mr. Mister came out, those songs were so perfect. They were candy coated.
Perfect.
And at sitting there watching Much Music in Canada and MTV when I would go to the States, you'd go, who is this band? Where did they come from? And then years later, as I started doing interviews and stuff, and you go, oh, he was on Shout at the Devil. Oh, he was on Caught in the Game. Oh, he was on. You go, oh, this guy was.
Yeah,
he's a ringer. He's not some rookie that they just threw out there and had perfect songs.
His career was waiting to happen.
Yep.
And the rest of the guys in Mr.
But quickly, Caught in the Game, though, was there an incredible amount of pressure? Was there an incredible expectation? It is sort of the last. Well, in fact, it is the last album that you've done with Survivor.
Yeah, it was my last album with Survivor. Yeah.
So talk to me about that experience, because we know the Eye of the Tiger story. It was a great time. They took off, but what was the after album like? Was that a good moment for you? Sort of saying, hey, we're king of the hill right now.
It was a little bit strange, because there was this just thing hanging over it all, and there was quite a bit of pressure, of course, to, repeat your success. It's always tough to. It wasn't our sophomore album because it was the title was our third album, but it felt like it because again that there's that pressure to do it again, right? And I thought there was some pretty good stuff on that record. I thought there was some pretty good songs on it and some good performances.
So let me ask you this then. Frankie Sullivan, produced all the albums. I have always felt that band members should not produce albums, and I'm not taking a shot at Frankie, but I've always thought that outside ears are important. What's sort of your take? And of course, we're not insulting Frankie here, but what's sort of your take on that? Would you have preferred to have maybe like a Bob Ezrin come in, or a Tom Werman come in, or Ron Nevison, or Frankie understood the band and Frankie knew what was right for us? How do you sort of look at outside producers and being self-produced?
I thought Frankie actually did a pretty good job of that. Now, he did have help. He had, Phil Bonanno, our longtime, engineer that worked with us in Chicago, and he was on part of the team there for the production, and Mike Klink, who had been Ron Nevison's, protege,
right?
So, yeah.
Before running off to Guns N' Roses, so you got him
running off to Guns N' Roses, pretty good, huh?
You got him in his formative years, and in fact, the co-host on the show is Alan Niven, who managed Guns N' Roses back in the day. So we get a lot of Mike Klink stories. But okay,
Mike Klink stories, great.
Yeah, and I just interviewed Nevison the other day. But okay, so talk to me about that though. Would you have preferred having a Nevison come in and do it, or did Frankie just really understand it the way it was supposed to be? I mean, I know you said he did a good job, but did he do a great job?
Yeah, I think he did a pretty great job, honestly. And who knows, right? If some outside producer had come in, but it seemed to work, It seemed to work, So yeah, I didn't have a problem with it, I mean, it could be rancorous at times. As a matter of fact, the day we recorded the vocal for Eye of the Tiger, I think I sang that song 100 times, and I'm not exaggerating, and it wasn't right. And at one point I just said, that's it. I left and went over to the video game parlor and played video games for a while, just to get out of the pressure cooker, and then came back in and we did a couple more takes, and that was it.
Well, then you've just proven his point. He got it right, because that song is absolutely perfect.
But it was torture. So it was torture.
In terms of the Dark Light album, I don't have the credits in front of me, but did you produce that yourself? No,
I mean, I didn't take a producer's production credit for that, but I mean, of course, when I was out with Ryan in California, I gave him production credit for producing the drums because he did, and he had his own studio and all that stuff, and he set up the drums and mic'd the drums and recorded them, and he was just brilliant at it, and so, he gets that. I mean, but we worked together, of course, we listened to the takes that we had, and we did that mutually, but I just, I didn't feel like I needed to take a production credit for that. I was part of that, but the same with Stephen Diakoutis, we work very closely together, but he deserves that producer hat for that,
Yeah, he really does. And I'll quickly remind the folks to head over to DaveBickler.com. It's pronounced as you hear it, DaveBickler.com. You can, of course, get the new album, Dark Light, and different bundles, in fact. Dave, absolute pleasure. It's really special to me, having grown up with your music in the, I remember specifically, I'm having a flashback of sitting in a pizza parlor, or a pizzeria, as I guess we call them. And you put the 25 cents in the quarter, and I spent a lot of quarters on Eye of the Tiger. I really did. And it's just nice to talk to the voice of that song and of that memory. So thank you.
Well, thanks. It's great to talk to you too. And apparently, we have a lot of connections, sort of crossing connections in our lives and stuff, and people that we know and all that. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's what you learn in this business. It's a very, very small world, and I sometimes I see different journalists or different writers or whatever, and they'll badmouth this guy or they'll badmouth that guy. And it's like, don't do that. He's connected to this guy who's connected to that publicist who's connected to that. Just be nice. Just be nice,
Yeah, I think it's better to be nice in general. I do. I don't think it costs you much. I realize that, things happen with people and all that. But in general, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the theme, too, with me these days, that the people I work with, I want them to be nice people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you can be talented and be successful and still be nice if possible.
Yeah, and it's great to have that sort of inner peace, and it's just, and I'll just quickly bring it back to Jim and Frankie. I interviewed both of them, and I'm not going to name names, but one of them was like, yeah, we had a great time, it was a great career, and I'd be happy to work with them again. And the other one was like, not a chance on God's green earth, the horrible, 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 miserable people. And I was like, really? After all these years, really? And I'll leave it at that.
I'm sorry to hear that, and I won't name any names either.
But I think you know which way the fingers are pointing. But yeah, it's too bad. It really is too bad. But anyway,
it's a shame.
It is, folks. Dark Light is out now. Dave Bickler, DaveBickler.com, and in fact, buy a copy. Don't stream it. Streaming is fun, but buying is better. Merci, monsieur. Thank you so much.
Hey, Mitch, it was great talking to you, my friend, really.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.